The subjects of socialism and communism have been a hot-button issue and a point of stark polarization within society for quite some time. Actually, a very long time. On one side, you have people who view socialism, perhaps even communism, as the ultimate savior, the key to a more equal and fair society. On the other hand, there's a group of people who see these two ideologies, especially communism, as not only unjust, but also directed towards a goal that ultimately leads to an unequal, tyrannical society. Although I do have my own opinion on this topic, I'm not here to persuade you to strongly take one side or the other. That decision belongs to you and you alone. Instead, the goal of my video and research is to present and inform you, as best as I can, what socialism and communism actually are and why they failed. To better understand socialism and communism and their eventual shortcomings, I will briefly delve into their historical roots. The germinal traces of both ideologies can be found in various parts of human history, or rather in various historical works, such as Plato's Republic or Thomas More's Utopia. But they gained their, let's say, modern start during the Industrial Revolution from 1760 to 1840. The Industrial Revolution was a period of profound economic, technological, and social changes. It marked a significant shift from then agrarian to industrial economies. It was driven by technological innovations that facilitated mass production and reduced the cost of goods, making them more affordable and available, thus improving the quality of life for the common folk. However, while this enhanced the living standards for many, it also led to harsh working conditions and economic disparities, with factory owners becoming more and more wealthy at the expense of laborers who, although better paid than their ancestors, struggle with long working hours, often 14 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, and often in dangerous working conditions. In response to these injustices, socialism emerged as an ideological alternative, aiming to address the inequalities inherent to the growing industrial capitalism. Early socialist thinkers such as Henri de Saint-Simon, Robert Owen, and Charles Fourier proposed models emphasizing cooperation and community over the competitive nature of capitalism. However, the most influential socialist, or rather communist thinkers, were German philosophers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who in 1848 published their seminal work, the Communist Manifesto. In short, Marx argued that all history was a history of class struggles, and that the working class, or the proletariat, would inevitably triumph over the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, leading to the establishment of communism, where all classes would be abolished and the means of production would be collectively owned. Socialism, from a Marxist view, serves as a precursor, a sort of intermediary stage between capitalism and the ultimate objective, communism. This is why communism is frequently labeled as revolutionary socialism, representing socialism's ultimate manifestation. Despite this distinction, confusion between socialism and communism still persists, partially because Marx and Engels never really made a clear differentiation between the two. But that's why you have this video. Socialism is an economic and political system characterized by collective ownership and control of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. Socialists argue that private ownership of the means of production, such as land, labor, and capital, leads to exploitation, class division, and economic inequality. Instead, they propose that the means of production should be owned and managed either by the state or by some sort of collective representing the community as a whole. By placing ownership and control of key industries in the hands of the state or the community, socialism seeks to ensure that wealth is distributed more evenly and that basic needs such as healthcare, education, and housing are universally accessible. Because of that, socialist societies are most often characterized by centrally planned economies, as opposed to the free market economies found in capitalist societies. This means that the government or a central planning authority makes decisions regarding what goods and services are produced, how much they are produced, and at what prices they are sold. That is in contrast with the free market economies, where prices are determined by supply and demand in decentralized markets. Socialist ideals include production for use rather than for profit, equitable distribution of wealth and resources among all people, no more competitive buying and selling in the market, and free access to goods and services. Capitalism, on the other hand, stands in contrast to socialism, with its belief in private instead of collective ownership and the goal to maximize profits. Now, this doesn't mean that in socialism private ownership is completely abolished. You can still own personal property, such as a comb or a hat, heck even a PlayStation, but the means of production, the means of producing those things, are owned by the state or a collective. Communism is an economic and political ideology that aims to achieve a classless, stateless society where the means of production would be owned and controlled by the community as a whole. In a communist society, private property would be abolished or severely diminished, and all resources and goods are to be held communally. The distribution of goods and services is based on the principle laid by Karl Marx, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. This means that individuals contribute to a society based on their skills and abilities, and everyone receives what they require to live a fulfilling life without the need for money or exchange. It's important to note that while many past and some current countries are commonly identified as communist, no society has fully achieved the communist ideal as envisioned by Marx and Engels. Instead, all of them, such as the Soviet Union, China, and Cuba, were and are countries with varying degrees of socialism. One thing that is quite evident to everyone, even to someone encountering the definitions of socialism and communism for the first time, is its inherent flaw, that in a socialist system, equality is pursued through a mechanism of resource allocation aimed at ensuring that every member of society has access to what they need. However, this necessitates the appointment of a distributor, typically the state, tasked with distributing resources among the population. This inherently places the distributor in a position of authority above everyone else, and in socialist states, that distributor often becomes cumbersome. The entire bureaucratic system necessary to fulfill socialism's objectives tends to become very large, corrupt, and frequently inefficient. Thus, in the pursuit of implementing socialism and fostering a more equitable society, the ideology itself generates a powerful and sizable caste of people, and in almost all cases, it results in a totalitarian society with a leader at the top, often surrounded by a cult of personality. Now, as I already mentioned, socialist economies were typically centrally planned. This centralization often led to inefficiencies, as the state bureaucracy struggled to allocate resources effectively without the market signals of supply and demand. What do I mean by that? Well, in a free market economy, like in capitalism, prices of goods and services change based on how much people want them and how hard they are to make. Meaningful economic knowledge is widely dispersed and is unveiled through people's actions. When people act, their preferences are revealed. For example, if few people want to buy an iPhone, meaning there's a low demand, Apple might lower the price to make it more appealing to potential buyers. This lower price could lead to an increase in demand as more people become interested in purchasing the iPhone. On the other hand, if there's a high demand for iPhones and everyone wants to buy one, Apple might increase the price. This higher price could help manage demand by discouraging some potential buyers, as well as allowing Apple to maximize profit on each unit sold. Information like this helps businesses decide what to make and how much to make. But in socialism, there are no signals like these to inform the government of people's desires or the level of demand. Instead, the entire process is centralized and becomes fundamentally political and thus economically irrational. There is no way for a political body to possess all the information necessary to make economic decisions, nor can they act rationally. This leads to economic chaos, shortages, surpluses, and misallocation of resources, which were common in all socialist states. Following on the previous reason, socialist systems often face challenges in providing adequate incentives for individuals to work hard and to innovate. In centrally planned economies, where wages and rewards were often uniform and determined by bureaucratic decision-making rather than market forces, There was less motivation for individuals to exert effort or take risks to improve productivity. This lack of incentive stifled innovation and entrepreneurship, leading to stagnation and inefficiency. Heck, why would you work if your basic needs are taken care of regardless of your effort? And finally, following on all of these reasons, socialist economies often struggle to compete with capitalist economies in the global market. The lack of flexibility and adaptability inherent in centrally planned systems made it difficult for socialist countries to keep pace with the technological advancements and market innovations characteristic of capitalist economies. Additionally, trade restrictions and isolationism imposed by socialist states limited their access to international markets and resources, further hindering their economic development. The opportunities for the implementation of socialism and communism existed in many iterations, yet they all resulted in the same outcome. Some argue that this is because no one really attempted to implement true socialist and communist ideals, but I disagree. In essence, while socialist and communist ideas may seem wonderful to some in theory, the reality of their implementation in practical situations led to largely catastrophic results. As Albert Einstein wonderfully put it, in theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not.